So this is Dan Gelbtuch here with Jessica. Hey, Jessica. We are doing another interview for Sounds of Solidarity, the Episcopal City Mission ECM video series, where we get to record and share beautiful interviews with our grantees to talk a little bit about their connection to our work in general and their beautiful, powerful organizing work, and then more specifically, the ways that they've been bringing spirit and healing and rest and care into their work in partnership with ECM through our Finding Our Way Home grant-making program. And so really excited to have Jessica Oliveira here. Jessica is not only a organizer with Matahari, a long-standing ECM grantee. Jessica is also a member of the Finding Our Way Home Wisdom Council. And so her wisdom has been all over this project as a whole. So really, really grateful, Jessica, that you've agreed to share some of your wisdom with us today. And I would ask just to introduce yourself and share a little bit about your background and your connection to Matahari and organizing work.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks, Dan. Yeah, Jessica Oliveira, they, them pronouns, co-director at Matahari, have been here for about 6 years. Yeah, what can I say? Growing up, I remember going with my mom to the houses, these beautiful, beautiful houses of her employers. She was a domestic worker, and usually my summer vacations entailed accompanying her on her house cleaning journeys, and getting to step into the life of people who lived in very different zip codes and had very beautiful homes, and who would spend their summers in places like Nantucket and Martha's Vineyard. And I remember being a kid, being a bit disconnected from the reality of my mom being in the house to clean, just kind of enjoying the grandness of the home. And two, also like gradually learning more and more about the challenges that my mom experienced as a domestic worker, both in the sense of being underpaid, experiencing harassment, experiencing fear on a regular basis, given our family's documentation status at the time. And also just like daily inconveniences, like taking multiple train rides and bus rides to get to her employers. So as I grew older, I kind of understood that this had been a part of my mom's life since she was actually a kid. Because she was my age. My mom started cleaning houses when she was about 10 years old. And she did that in exchange for living and going to school and being fed and having a roof over her head. She had a really tough life from the time that she was very young, and didn't get to have a childhood. So I think as I grew up and as I understood more and more about the conditions of domestic workers, women like my mom who are immigrants, who are house cleaners, who have been undocumented, and who work in the home, in the private home, whether it's cleaning people's homes or taking care of their children or taking care of the elderly, that these care workers were facing really significant justice challenges. So that lived experience, and my mother's experience, really, my mother and my aunt and my grandmother, who were all care workers, it's really seeing their experience that brought me to justice work, and that specifically brought me to Matahari, which is an organization here in Boston that organizes domestic workers for better labor standards, better working conditions for the sector as a whole.
Thanks so much, Jessica. Thank you for your beautiful story, and thank you for your work. Really, thank you for years of dedication to Matahari and to this movement for racial and economic justice. It's really moving. And I know that in addition to doing really powerful organizing work, you and Matahari really value a perspective and a practice of healing and care for your staff organizers, for your members. And I know when we were starting Finding Our Way Home, we really looked to you, you specifically, and Matahari as models of how to do this, of how to bring really powerful, really strategic organizing work into deep relationship with practices and perspectives around care and spirit and healing. And so if you'd be willing to share a little bit about your experience sort of in general with healing justice, and then in specific with Finding Our Way Home, we would love that.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks, Dan. That's very kind. Yeah. So I think it kind of comes down, at least in some ways, to Matahari's founding. We're a grassroots organization that's been around for about 20 years. And before we actually started organizing, we were founded by case managers. Like our founder was actually a caseworker, a woman of color, who noticed a gap between the services that were available in Massachusetts to immigrant women of color like herself. And actually noticed how prevalent it was for immigrant women of color to experience conditions of gender-based violence and exploitation in the workplace. And we actually were responsible for like accompanying many labor trafficking survivors. And so Matahari's founder in our history was like very rooted in the work of accompaniment, like removing someone from labor trafficking conditions, supporting them through services to return to society in a way that felt dignified and safe. And so that's really such a big and important part of our history, because it was really our first 10 years of life. We're this group of organizers, volunteer case managers who were coming together to advocate and support labor trafficking survivors. And then it was somewhere in 2009 that we became a grassroots organizing group. And it was because our executive director at the time, our new executive director after the founder, Monique, she brought a lens of organizing to that work, of believing that it was important to do root cause organizing just as much as it was to like tend to the conditions of our society here in Massachusetts. And so we started grassroots organizing, but we still had this lineage of healing. And during the pandemic, especially when I joined Matahari right before the pandemic, about a year before the pandemic, it did cause us to shift really clearly to to meet the crisis of the moment. Workers were being let go of unexpectedly and in deep need of mutual aid networks that would support their living needs until they found new work. This is very common for domestic workers to be fired suddenly. It's always been true, but then during the pandemic, it became true in mass. And so we decided to hire a health justice coordinator with the first Finding Our Way Home grant. She's a full-time doctor whose residency program very generously created space for 8 hours of her clinical week or a day to be dedicated to movement building. And so we were able to partner with her. She launched our Healing Justice Committee. This grant actually supported her work. And we started to understand more specifically, more deeply, what people's needs were during the pandemic. We launched a listening campaign, spoke to over 100 people in 1 week, and trained like 13 members to be able to like have those conversations in their community to like understand how the pandemic was affecting workers' lives, and then to decide with that information as a committee what we wanted to do about it. And so from there, we decided to offer healing in a variety of ways. People participated in group therapy sessions for a while. People were able to engage in programming that was more centered around healing, like getting outside, going on nature walks together while having to social distance, still be in community, even while we were living apart. And since like those early phases, the work has continued into training our members in healing justice lineage and tools, so that they are bringing it into all of our organizing meeting spaces. So for example, doing groundings at the beginning of our campaign meetings. We also begin most of our meetings now with a circle practice, like a simple circle practice, like rooted in the restorative justice tradition, where people are able to connect more deeply, and then also do more deep and powerful grassroots organizing work. So it's become very interwoven into everything that we do, and the work of the Healing Justice Committee has continued and grown. And now we actually have started to think of ways that, like in our staff, we could also implement healing justice. So an experiment that we were able to try with support of the grant recently was actually sending our all women of color co-directorship team to a healing retreat where they were able to experience sound healing, where they were able to experience different healing modalities after some really, really big work of the pandemic. And we also have recently experimented with a shorter work week and more flexible hours. So there's both like organizational ways that we've been practicing, and also ways that center like the organizing work with our base in our committees.
Thanks, Jessica. Yeah, thanks first and foremost just for your modeling of this. It's really hard. It's really hard to do like deep organizing work and then infuse it with care and rest and spirit. And so thank you for modeling that. And then, now as we're able to share this recording, it really will be a gift to people who are interested in doing this integration work and learning from you and learning from your story. And so, yeah, really, really thank you. Thank you for that. Great. Well, this has been another episode of Sounds of Solidarity from Episcopal City Mission, where we celebrate leaders like Jessica, who are working at the intersection of power building and healing. And so thank you, Jessica, and thanks everyone for listening.